So my male 29, wife 27, has been a stay-at-home mother since the pandemic began. She lost her job because of the global issue, and given that we were stuck at home most of the time, we decided that it was better for us to fire our housekeeper and have her be a stay-at-home mom, at least until the kids, young grammar school female, preschool male, toddler male, were a little older. And it's mostly been fine. We split chores around 40% me, 60% her. She does most of the daily household work, and I take over when I get home, except on weekends, when we either work together or one of us relaxes. The thing is, I gave her free rein on the monthly financials of the household. We thought she spent most of the time buying things for the family. She'd know best what to buy, how, and when, and it would be a waste of time to discuss every purchase or financial decision. And that was fine as well, until about 4 months ago, when I noticed some discrepancies. I began noticing a bunch of $49.99 or $99.99 purchases. Initially, I didn't pay them any mind, but over time, there were more and more. So eventually, I did a little digging, checked who the purchases were made to, and tracked how often, looked at what my wife does in her free time. Long story short, over just the last 2 months, she spent $10K on gotcha games. Look, I'm not ridiculous. I understand people have hobbies that can require expensive purchases. I spend $200 on video games every month, but $10K in 2 months on gotcha games? Games specifically designed to keep you paying and paying. I consider it a real problem. So I confronted her. I told her that I'm not giving her a blank check anymore, not unless she seeks professional help. I told her that I called our old housekeeper and she'll start working with us again this month to help her with the kids. She said it's not that big of a deal because we can afford it. I told her yes, we can afford it for now, but it's a dangerous game she's playing and she needs help. I told her the housekeeper would have to approve the financial decisions in the household together with her. Then she called me an idiot and said that I was financially controlling her because I was the only source of income in that household. Am I the idiot for not giving my stay-at-home wife any more money until she seeks help? $10K in 2 months? Impressive. Not the idiot. This isn't about being financially controlling. It's being responsible with money. Her argument that you can afford it is honestly terrifying. She spent $10K in 2 months on basically nothing at all? Nothing. It's not even gambling in the sense that she could have won something. She just spent it on digital nothingness. And if she keeps it up at that pace, you're not going to be able to afford it. You could lose your house, your savings. You could end up in some kind of debt you can't dig your way out of. She needs therapy. Yeah, I'll bet she didn't even realize it had gotten to that extent. Your wife has a problem, one that could potentially create significant problems for your family. Do you know if she was doing that with the money she earned before? Personally, I think she should go back to work to pay off her gaming addiction without a housekeeper. Given that you've already rehired the housekeeper, you should still expect better accountability. Start with paying the housekeeper's salary with her earnings. You are the idiot because this housekeeper thing is insane. Overall, I'm on board with this post, but you cannot put this on your housekeeper. She cleans houses. It's not her job to be a financial babysitter for your wife's app store addictions, and you're putting her in a terrible position by expecting this of her. It sets up an innocent worker to bear the brunt of your wife's abuse and insult when you're not around. Agreed. This took a wild turn. Why would your housekeeper be an appropriate person for this at all? Really? You need to have a conversation with your wife about it and why she's doing it. Did she know she spent that much? Is it an addiction? Is it depression? Do you actually just make enough money that it doesn't matter? Is she financially literate? Does she have some kind of financial trauma that makes budgeting hard or impossible, and it just became relevant when she got into these games? From there, you can look into counselors or therapists, but suddenly and without warning, cutting her off and setting up a gatekeeper, a la your housekeeper, truly sucks. My friend and his wife just bought their first home. It's a fixer-upper, and I've been helping them out with the fixing. My father was a handyman and contractor, so I have a lot of skills and experience doing maintenance, repairs, and upgrades on a house. I also have the tools I need to do most of the work. This last weekend, I was helping paint the dining room. I had everything set up the way I wanted, and I was ready to go. For some reason, his wife decides to let their dogs into the room I'm painting. One steps into the roller tray and then jumps on me. His wife laughed it off like it wasn't a big deal that I now had paw prints on me. I also had to throw out that primer because it had mud in it now. I had told them both to let me do the work in peace. After I prepared a new tray of paint, I wrote curse words in huge letters on the wall in primer. For those of you who may not know, primer is the coat of paint that you put down before the actual paint. For lack of a better word, it sticks to the wall better, and when it dries, it creates a better surface for the paint to stick to. His wife saw it and freaked. She said I was drawing profanity in her house. I told her it was primer and to stay out of my way. I then finished the job and went home. My friend called me and said that I had really upset his wife with my childishness and that she wouldn't let me back until I apologized. I asked him what I was apologizing for. He said that I wrote a curse word on his wall. I asked him to provide a picture. He said he couldn't since I had painted over it. I asked what the problem was then, since the word wasn't there anymore. He said that I needed to apologize. I said that his wanting me to apologize was in no way the same as my needing to apologize. He said that I could not come back until I did. No problem for me. I was helping him for free on my weeks off from work. He called me 2 days later and asked if I was coming to finish painting since I would be away at work for 3 weeks. I said I wasn't ready to apologize yet, and maybe I would when I got back. I probably won't. Now she's telling everyone that I'm a crappy person for leaving a job half finished. I told everyone who asked that I was working for free and that they told me not to return. Now there's a big fight in our friend group between the people who think I should keep the peace and those who think she's an entitled whiner. No one else is volunteering to help at their house, and now they either have to do half the job or pay someone. I'm getting grief for that too. Am I the idiot? OMG, not the idiot. Oh, what a scary threat. You can't come back and work for free on your days off unless you apologize? Well, gosh, can't I? Guess I'll just have to watch TV then. If they want you to come back and paint their stupid fixer-upper for free, then they can suck it up and be grateful. Do not act like their highness are doing you a favor by letting you paint on your time off from work. Oh, thank you so much for letting me work for free. They would have been charged extra if they hired a professional after the dog incident. And hey, the professional may never come back the next day because they have other projects and will get to their highness later. You wrote that on the wall because you're being taken advantage of in this friendship. Honestly, I would have packed up and walked out after the dog incident. My husband, 26, and I, 25 female, have a young boy. After the first month or so, I took on full responsibility for night feeds. This makes sense since I'm exclusively breastfeeding, and I think there's no reason why we both have to have our sleep interrupted when there's not much my husband can add to that equation. To compensate, my husband usually takes the baby in early mornings with a pumped bottle of milk so I can get a few extra hours of sleep. Although this arrangement does work, the lack of sleep has been taking a toll on my mental health recently. In addition, although my husband is a great and very present dad 99% of the time, there have been multiple occasions very recently in which I felt I'm being treated as the default parent. He's agreed that he needs to be more considerate about automatically assuming that I'll take care of the baby if he wants or needs to do something else. This morning I was particularly exhausted after a difficult night and told my husband I was at my limit and needed a serious break for a few hours. He said no problem. However, about half an hour later, he told me he was going to the gym with his friends and would be back in a few hours. I immediately got very upset and said I couldn't believe he was saying this after the conversation we had just had. He said going to the gym was important for his mental and physical health, so he needed to go. I said I really needed a break now and asked if he could at least go later, e.g. in the evening, so I could get a proper break first. He said I needed to be more flexible, that he would take over taking care of the baby as soon as he was home, and that I could just rely on his mother to help out for a few hours. We live with my in-laws and went anyway. I feel very unsupported and alone. His mother is very helpful, but she has her own responsibilities, and I can't exactly ask her to contact nap with the baby for 3 hours while I relax and unwind. I appreciate that mental and physical health are important for new dads and new moms. So, am I the idiot for wanting my husband to delay his workout for my benefit? You weren't forbidding him from going to the gym completely, just asking him to go at a time that worked better for the family. Honestly, all this stuff about his mental and physical health is irrelevant in this situation. There were several options to get his gym time in and not shaft you on sleep, and he chose none of them because he assumed you'd pick up his slack. Not cool. Not the idiot, and your husband needs to step up. Husband can suck on it, needing this for his mental and physical health. He's getting a full night of sleep each night because his angel of a wife is willing to take on the full burden of sleep deprivation for 9 solid weeks. Sleep deprivation is categorized as torture. She is willing to undergo torture for him so he can sleep at night, and he somehow thinks his mental and physical health comes before hers? That's a flaming pile of selfish BS. He's treating her as the default parent and thinks he can get cookies for putting in any effort. His job should be to take care of the baby, solo, for at least 5 hours a day, so she can get a solid chunk of sleep before she gets too exhausted and drops the baby. I don't think he's aware that he's the father of that child and that his responsibilities and priorities changed the second that child was born. He absolutely sees you as the default parent and is not pulling his weight. He needs to step up and grow up. Obviously, not my decision, but I wouldn't recommend having any more children with him unless he can prove he can be a good father and a good partner. Until that, you're a married single mother, love. I, female 28, have a 2-story house I own. I live in the upper level and rent out the lower floor to people I know personally. One of my rules is not renting to people with kids or pets, primarily dogs, or musicians. It's to avoid noise, destruction of property, and any intrusion into my private space. I know many people who are cool with this, and I rent to them. My rent is usually cheaper too, because I prefer a good tenant over more profit, so it's constantly rented. Anyways, a few months back, my then tenant had to move for a job. This created a vacancy, and I told a few people I knew loved my home space. The sister of one of said friends overheard them discussing the low rent of my property with their spouse and got my number from them. She asked if she could have this home. The issue is that she has 3 kids under 10. She was begging on the phone because apparently our lease was up on her last home. She couldn't afford to renew or get any other place since her partner left them high and dry, etc. I told her I'd already promised another friend and there was no vacancy. I hadn't made any such promise and said that because 1, didn't want to have 3 kids in my home, and 2, did not trust her to pay rent. She begged more, saying she needed the apartment more since she had kids. I told her sorry, no, and left that conversation. I rented it to a couple soon after and forgot all about this. Last week I saw my friend, whose sister had called. When the conversation about home came up, I told him his sister had called. He grimaced, saying she had coerced him to give him my number. I said it was fine and casually asked if she had found a place. He said she did, but it was in a very unsafe neighborhood and very poor living conditions, a studio flat at that. His wife, who was with him, said I was an idiot for not renting my home to her. Am I the idiot? I need it more because I have kids, and there she just showed you exactly what kind of tenant she would be and why you were completely right in saying no vacancy. Not the idiot, Just make sure everything you do follows your laws and regulations. I don't want to live with kids either, and you're right. She likely wouldn't have been able to pay rent, and it would have been a nightmare. Or you would have been the babysitter and forced to call authorities. She sounds like the entitled type, too. Exactly. The woman made it clear she had financial issues, and while I sympathize with her predicament, kids do take a toll on the property, and they can be very noisy. It wouldn't be fair on OP to live in a potentially noisy home with a tenant who's very likely unable to pay the rent. I hope the woman is able to get a good amount of child support from her ex so she can move someplace safe. His wife, who was with him, said I was an idiot for not renting my home to her. I'm petty, so I would have been like, so are you an idiot for not giving them a safer space since it's your family and not mine? People love to spend others' money, use their time, and offer their resources. Part of why you have lower rent is because you have conditions. There's always someone willing to complain and moan about what you should have done to help someone else out, seemingly, especially when the person who needs help is one of their relatives or friends or acquaintances who, for whatever reason, they've chosen not to help. If you won't, then don't come complain to me. By the way, every single mom I've ever rented to has a deadbeat boyfriend waiting to move in. My 31 male, oldest kid, is my wife's biological son that I adopted. Last year, his school recommended he be assessed for a neurological disability. The process of finding a specialist that our insurance will work with has taken a long time. This specialist wants a lot of medical background information on our son. My wife only has her medical background information, which she provided. The specialist said this wasn't sufficient. I found your ex on Facebook, and I messaged him to ask for his family's medical history. I explained why. He immediately blocked me. I found his sister on Facebook after that and sent a similar request. She said she would get me the information. We exchanged emails about this. I got an email from the guy telling me to stay away from him and his family, or he'll sue me. I told the guy I was just trying to find out the information I needed, and that if he wasn't willing to help me, I would explore other avenues. He called me an entitled idiot and said I had no right to his personal information. He said scum like me is the lowest of the low. I have, however, continued to email his sister despite his objections. Am I the idiot here? Sure, it's his personal information, but it's my son's personal information too, and he needs it. Could I actually be in the wrong? Not the idiot. Your wife should have handled it, but you're not an idiot for doing right by your child. X is not obligated to provide anything. I'm curious about the specialist. Have they never heard of adoption before? What do they mean by insufficient? Not everyone has access to both biological parents' family's medical background. I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't complete the testing because bio-dad's an idiot. I would agree with this if the child were his stepson, but he's OP's adopted son, and OP and mom are equally responsible for and entitled to information about the son. Of course, the specialist knows about adoption, but when you may have a heritable condition, it greatly impacts what they test for and what they can rule out. They don't refuse to run the test if you don't have your full background. It is more difficult and often more expensive to make a diagnosis with less information available. LOL, that guy is a disgrace for refusing to provide medical history that could help his child. He abandoned his child as a newborn and now calls you the lowest of the low for asking about medical info? Sounds like a real winner. I'm not sure why so many people don't get why your wife doesn't want to talk to this man. It's pretty obvious to me. Thank you for stepping up for your kid. You're awesome.